Some of my friends think I have the most glamorous job on earth, and I have to admit that sometimes I think so myself. However, this day was not one of those days. I'm a commercial photographer, and I love my job. I wouldn't trade it for anything else, but from time to time I have to remind myself of this. Instead of being on the picturesque Peoria waterfront shooting two beautiful models for Feminine Classics, a women's clothing line, I was driving north on I-55 about an hour from my home in Arlington Hills, a small suburb 25 miles away, northwest of Chicago. I planned 3 full days for filming and thought everything was fine. The weekend before this, I went to see the locations and take notes on which direction the sun would be shining at different times of the day. The models were some of the clients' favorites. One was brought from New York, the other from Atlanta. Both were supposed to be waiting for us, but when we arrived, neither of them was there yet. A call to the modeling agency gave us an explanation. The advertising agency representative instructed his assistant to organize the girls, and he gave them the wrong dates. I tried calling some of the local Chicago models I use, but no one could commit to 3 days of filming in such a short time. We were doomed. The client wasn't going to pay everyone to spend 3 days enjoying Peoria hospitality, so we all packed up and headed home. At first I was furious. I'm self-employed. If I don't work, I don't make money, and now I was looking at 3 days of doing nothing. There was no way I could have planned anything else as a replacement. I had just turned onto I-355, the final stretch of my way home, when it hit me. Why waste the rest of the week? It was only Wednesday afternoon. I had the whole Thursday and Friday left. I could give myself a 4-day weekend. Stacy, my wife, and I haven't been on vacation or gone anywhere for a long time. The sky was blue, there was no rain in the forecast, and I began to dream of a quiet little place just for the two of us. My thoughts began to wander. I imagined us sitting on a private balcony, somewhere sucking a glass of wine and watching a beautiful sunset. I started thinking about places we could go suddenly. The problem was that I didn't want to just go to some hotel or motel. I wanted something intimate and romantic. I was still scratching my head when I pulled into the garage. It was almost dinner time. I thought Stacy would be in the kitchen. You can hear the garage door opening and closing from anywhere on the first floor, so I wondered why she wasn't standing in the doorway asking why I was back. She must be upstairs, I thought as I entered the empty kitchen. You can't hear the garage door from the upstairs bedroom. I was about to surprise her when I heard the sound of heels hitting the tiled hallway at the bottom of the stairs. I turned the corner and saw her in front of the mirror. The image in front of me stopped me in my tracks. Apparently, she had been to a stylist. Her beautiful wavy strawberry blonde hair fell loosely over her shoulders. Around her smooth neck hung the pearl necklace I gave her for our anniversary, and her makeup was flawless. The legendary little black dress barely covered her knees, and the ensemble was completed with black silk stockings with some kind of pattern. A pair of black shoes with 4-inch heels made the sound I heard. When my jaw dropped, she saw my reflection in the mirror and literally screamed, "Shane, what are you doing at home?" Even from where I stood, I saw the horror in her face reflected in the mirror. I have a better question. Where are you dressed up like that? I really took her by surprise. She started to stutter, but the best she could come up with was, girls, honey, I was just going out with the girls." She should have known how ridiculous that sounded even before the words left her mouth. "With girls? What the hell? Answer me, damn it. Where are you going, and who is this bastard you're on a date with?" She simply froze, standing there in numbness and fear. Her mouth was open, but nothing came out. I noticed her small purse by the door. Obviously, she put it there to check herself one last time before leaving. "We'll find out right now," I stated, walking towards her. She must have been terrified. She knew I would never hit her or any other woman, but she flinched when I reached past her and grabbed the small purse. "What? What are you doing?" "I'm checking your phone. Now we're going to find out who this lover is," I growled. "Wait, please, Shane, don't," she begged. "It was a mistake. Please." I saw her mascara run. Panicking, she tried to grab her purse, but was too slow. Try that again, and I swear I'll. I growled through clenched teeth. I didn't finish the sentence because I didn't know what I would have done. Like I said, I would never hit a woman. However, my voice was so full of anger and malice that I know it scared the living daylights out of Stacy because she backed up against the wall. When I opened the purse, I saw one of the reasons for her panic. In addition to the phone, there was a safe sex box. I looked at her with disgust. Stacy looked like she wanted to cry, but her fear kept her from letting out the tears. I pulled out her phone and threw her purse on the floor. I immediately scrolled through her call log. She clearly deleted her call history, but since she didn't expect me at home in the next 3 days, she didn't bother to delete the last ones. The first call was to her friend Joan. The third was to her best friend Gwen Carlson, but in the middle was Joe Wexler. He and his wife, Doris, were supposedly our friends. It wasn't convincing enough. One call wasn't enough to make accusations, so I checked the text messages. Although she deleted the history there too, several messages during the day were sent and received from Wexler. They started a couple of hours after I left in the morning. The last message was sent an hour before I returned home. Stacy, hello, love, my husband left. Are you sure you can't come now? I'm still in bed and naked. Wexler, damn, stop teasing me, beautiful. You know I can't take a day off. Besides, you said I couldn't come to your house. Stacy, I'm just teasing you. Wexler, see you soon. Doris thinks I'm leaving town, so we have the whole night ahead of us. Stacy, have you made your reservation yet? Wexler, yes, at the Country Hills Motel. It's right opposite the restaurant. Stacy, hopefully there will be a king bed, or rather a play area. Wexler, yes, I am convinced of this. The next message came from Wexler around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Wexler, damn, this day goes on forever. Cannot wait. Stacy, and me too, love. I bought a new dress especially for you. Wexler, really? I hope it can be removed quickly. Stacy, there's not much to film. Besides, you haven't had a problem with this before. Wexler, you're teasing. I think I'll get out on time. Meet me at 6 at the restaurant. Stacy, I'll be there, love. I looked at my watch. It was 5:30. Country Hills Motel. I knew I'd seen it, but I couldn't remember where. As I headed to the computer in my office, Stacy found the voice. Wait, Shane, what are you going to do? Please let me talk to you. I'm sorry, it didn't mean anything, honestly. It was just supposed to be a little fun. Please don't do anything rash. I ignored her pleas, but thought about what she said as I walked to my office. Fun, right? Well, I hope they had fun, because what's next is not going to be fun. I still held her phone in my hand as I leaned over my computer desk and typed in the name of the motel. As soon as I saw the address, I knew exactly where it was. It was a former Sheraton that was bought about a year ago. Good old Joe is about to get the surprise of his life. I walked back into the living room where I dropped off Stacy's purse. She still followed me, begging me to sit down and talk to her. I took out her car keys, then went into the kitchen and literally ripped the phone off the wall. Shane, what are you doing? Stacy shouted. By then, her tears were already streaming down her cheeks. With so much mascara running down her face, she looked like a circus clown. Make sure you can't call your lover and warn him, I growled. Warn him? Shane, what are you going to do? Please, honey, please don't do anything stupid. By the time she finished screaming, I was already halfway to our upstairs bedroom. I grabbed the phone from the nightstand and yanked hard, ripping the cord from the wall and snapping the connector in half. Shane, please stop, she begged. You're scaring me. I thought, okay, maybe she'll think twice about cheating on her next husband. There was nothing more I could do. I knew she could run to the neighbors and use their phone, but I took a chance that she didn't know the number by heart. With cell phones these days, who remembers numbers? And besides, how could she tell her lover that her husband was on his way to kick his ass in front of the neighbor? She followed me to the car, screaming in my ear, but I had already passed out. All I could think about was what I was going to do with Joe Wexler. I saw Stacy kneel down in the middle of the driveway with her face buried in her hands as I pulled out. For a moment my rage subsided, and I sadly wondered why she had cheated on me. Is Wexler more of a man than I am? That's when my anger returned, and I thought, I guess we'll figure this out soon. There were still a lot of cars on the roads, and it wasn't until 6:15 that I arrived at the Plateau restaurant, right across from the Country Hills Motel. I parked the car and headed toward the entrance when Stacy's phone vibrated with a text. Wexler, you're late. I hope everything is okay. No, everything is not okay, I shouted as I walked past the innocent hostess and burst into the restaurant. Wexler's head turned sharply in the direction of my voice. His eyes looked like they would pop out of their sockets when he saw me rushing towards him. Shane, he blurted out in panic. He tried to quickly get up, but his heel got caught on something, and he, along with the chair he was sitting on, fell to the floor with a loud crash. There was fear in his eyes as he looked at me. He tried to crawl away on his butt. Ha, so he's more of a man than me, I thought. Hey, what's going on? I heard someone scream from afar, but did not pay attention to it. I was focused on my lover. Wait, Shane, don't do anything crazy, he muttered, awkwardly getting to his feet. I hit him. This bastard is sleeping with my wife, I screamed. Okay, maybe he deserves it, but not here, I heard someone say. I knew the fight was over, at least for now. Some of the hands that were holding me let go when they felt me starting to calm down. I looked down and saw that Joe had put his phone on the table after his last text. Most eyes were directed at him. The phone was exactly the same as mine. I took it and put it in my pocket. One of the guys who was holding me was now focusing his attention on the fool. I assumed he was either a bartender or a manager based on the way he took control of the situation. He shouted to someone named Eddie to call the police. When I looked around, I realized that no one was paying attention to me. Everyone was too concerned about their lover, so I turned around and just walked out. I knew it was only a matter of time before the cops came for me, but I had one more thing to do before they arrested me: ruin Joe Wexler's life. I quickly walked to my car. As soon as I sat down and was out of sight, I took Wexler's phone out of my pocket and dialed his house number. Of course, Doris thought it was her loving husband calling. Hey, honey, I thought you were already on the plane. Is everything okay? Joe's not on the plane, Doris. He's not even leaving town. He's at the Plateau restaurant, where he was supposed to meet my wife. They're having an affair, I stated bluntly. What? Who is this? She screamed. I don't believe you, whoever you are. This is Shane Burke, Doris, and I'm afraid it's true. I heard her sigh. At this moment, I received a signal about the second call. I was going to ignore him, but the number seemed familiar. I had a hunch, so I acted accordingly. I told Doris to wait a second and pressed the switch button, then quickly switched again and successfully set up the phone for a three-way call. Stacy's voice came loud and clear. Joe, get out of there now. Shane came home early and caught me on the way out. He knows Joe. He's coming for you. Get out. Fire. You're a bitch, Doris shouted from the other line. You're a damn bitch. I'll rip your heart out. If you want it so bad, you can take it. There was a short pause before Stacy realized she was talking to Doris. No, Stacy screamed. I heard her start crying again. Heard that someone else was in the room with her. My suspicions were that it was Gwen, Stacy's best friend. I checked her number on Stacy's phone. It matched the number she called from. She lives about 3 miles from us. Stacy probably went to her place to use her phone because she didn't want our neighbors to know what she did. Besides, we were all in the same circle of friends, and Gwen most likely had Wexler's number. The line went dead as Stacy sobbed in the background. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. My mind went into overdrive, processing the events of the last hour. 2 families destroyed, just like that. Stacy and I didn't have children yet, but Joe and Doris had a son. My vision became hazy as I looked out the windshield, and began to wonder the famous question that all men ask themselves in a similar situation: why? I thought she was happy. What went wrong? A few tears broke through and fell onto my cheeks, then continued down my face. I used to love her. I loved her with all my heart. How could she betray me like that? I don't know how many times I asked myself the same questions, but it didn't matter. I still wouldn't find the answer. I was still sitting there when I heard sirens approaching the corner. A few seconds later, 3 police cars arrived at the entrance to the restaurant. Damn, I thought, it really didn't take them long. I sat there for a minute trying to decide what to do. Hell, I was sure Joe would tell them who I was. They will still come to my house to arrest me, so it is better to surrender immediately. The problem was in my car. It still had my camera equipment in it, and I wasn't about to leave it in the lot or let them tow it to the impound lot. I took out my phone and called Marcy, my assistant. She used my car to run errands and had her own keys. She was with me in Peoria and just returned home. I was embarrassed to do this to her, knowing how tired she was after a long trip. But when I told her the situation, she took care of everything like a real pro. She said that she would be at the restaurant in half an hour. Then we'll leave his car in the parking lot and we'll take mine home. I gave her the code so she could park the car in the garage. When she's done, she'll take a taxi to her car and add the cost of the taxi to her expense account. Sometimes I have no idea what I would do without her. Since the issue with the car was resolved, I no longer had any excuses. I returned to the restaurant. With 3 police cars parked at the entrance, I expected the place to be swarming with cops, but everything looked normal. I looked around and saw a guy pointing at the bar. "They've all gone back," he told me. I nodded in acknowledgement and walked behind the bar and down a short hallway to a door marked office. I heard voices from inside. I knocked. "Yes," I heard someone shout. Inside the office was the guy who held me earlier. Now I was sure that he was the manager. 3 police officers and Wexler were also present. The fool was sitting on a chair with an ice pack on his cheek. From what I could see, it was already very swollen and turning purple. You should have seen the expressions on everyone's faces when I entered. "I just found out he's sleeping with my wife," I stated. "I think I've gone a little crazy." "Is this the man who hit you, sir?" asked one of the policemen. Before the bastard could respond, the manager intervened. "Yes, that's him." "Mr. Vicentes Wexler, do you want to file a complaint?" asked the same policeman. He must be older than the others because he asked all the questions. Wexler was still silent. I think he was thinking about how to hide all this from his wife. I decided to knock this thought out of his head. He looked at me as I began to speak. "If you're afraid Doris will find out, she already knows," I said, tossing him his phone. Instinctively, he caught it with his right hand. Recognizing him, he leaned over in his chair and began to sob like a child. If I didn't hate that bastard so much, I might almost feel sorry for him. "Mr. Kent Wexler." The policeman began asking him the same question again. "No, no," the bastard sobbed, shaking his head from side to side. His face was hidden in his hands. The policeman looked at the manager. "What about you? He caused a disturbance in your restaurant. Do you want to charge him with disorderly conduct?" I think the manager was on my side because he immediately refused to press charges. Then the policeman turned to me. "Sir, may I have your documents?" I took out my wallet, pulled out my driver's license, and handed it to the man in blue. He took a notepad from his breast pocket and wrote down my information. When he finished, he turned his attention back to Wexler. "Sir, I strongly recommend that you go to the hospital and get an X-ray. You may have a broken jaw." My enemy was still crying, shaking his head and muttering that he was fine. I saw the policeman's name as he turned around and handed me back my ID. "Okay, since no one is pressing charges, you can go, but don't go too far. If Mr. Kaiser Wexler has serious injuries, the situation may change," Officer Dolby said. "Yes, sir," I replied, taking my documents and putting them back in my wallet. "Mr. Burke, you seem to have a violent streak. How is Mrs. Burke?" I knew he was just doing his job, but Officer Dolby was starting to annoy me. "I have no violent tendencies," I answered sharply. "Mrs. Burke is fine. I would never hit a woman under any circumstances. But if you think I'm such a bad person, try coming home and finding your wife all dressed up, ready for a date with one of your friends. Look, how will you react?" "Okay," he replied. "I understand, but you're lucky. You could be in big trouble right now. I suggest you calm down and talk to your wife. It might not be as bad as you think." I chuckled at the policeman's attempt to play marriage counselor and thanked him with a grin. Turning to leave, the manager spoke. "Mr. Burke, I don't want to see you here again." "That suits me too," I snapped. "I make friends quickly, that's for sure." As I left the parking lot, I mentally replayed the police officer's words. "I'm really lucky. I could go to jail right now." I walked through the row of parked cars and discovered another problem. It's just not my day. My car is missing. The first thing that came to my mind was that someone had stolen it with my equipment inside. Then I remembered my call to Marcy. Crap, she arrived faster than I expected. I looked around and sure enough, across the aisle, I saw Marcy's old Chevy. So what now? I reached for my phone, but couldn't do it. I knew how tired she was, and calling her to tell her it was all in vain didn't seem like a good idea. I looked back. No, I was not going to return to that damned place even just to call a taxi. I looked across the road. There, a 6-story building painted green and white, stood another major player in my wife's betrayal, the Country Hills Motel. I immediately imagined my wife and that bastard in one of the rooms. I really didn't want to go there any more than I wanted to see the inside of the Plateau restaurant again. This was crazy, I told myself. It's irrational. I can't blame the building for what happens inside its walls. I crossed the road and entered through the front door. Exactly what I suspected my wife and her lover would have done if that stupid assistant hadn't messed up with the filming. I walked up to the front desk and was immediately greeted by a young, exceptionally nice girl. "Yes, sir. May I help you?" "Yes. Could you give me the taxi number?" I asked. "Of course. Would you like me to dial it for you, sir?" It's funny how sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a person's attitude. For her, it was a simple gesture, part of her duties, but for me, it was the most pleasant thing I heard all day. A smile broke out on my lips as I answered. "That's very nice of you, thank you." I glanced at her name tag, Electa. "Wow, that's a pretty name." "Thank you," she replied, dialing the number with a small smile. Taxis brought me to my entrance. I entered the code on the garage door and checked to see if my car was there. On the spot. I didn't know what to expect when I entered the house. Will Stacy be there or not? Damn, I didn't know what would happen next. I've never been in this situation before. I've never felt this way. And then reality began to hit. I had been running on pure adrenaline for the last couple of hours, but suddenly everything started to dawn on me. My wife, the woman I loved with all my heart, my friend, my lover, cheated on me. My knees buckled. I had to sit on the steps leading into the house to avoid falling. I took a few deep breaths and sat there until I came to my senses. I entered the kitchen from the laundry room that connects the house and garage. The first thing I did was see if there was coffee. He was absent. Of course, I thought, she wasn't expecting you home, remember, stupid. Why would she have prepared it? I was pouring water into the coffee maker when I felt a presence. I looked towards the door to the living room. "Gwen, what are you doing here? Where is Stacy?" Apparently, she had a key to our house, which my wife gave her. "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. I didn't see your car and thought you were gone. Stacy gave me the key and asked me to pick up something for her. She's scared to come home, Shane. She's scared to death," her best friend replied. "My wife's. This is nonsense. I have never laid a hand on her or any other woman. She knows perfectly well that I would never hit her." "She's not afraid you'll hit her, Shane. She's afraid of what you'll say to her." "Fine, that's fine with me. Keep her with you until I pack my things and leave here," I growled. "Shane, please don't do anything rash. She Reckless, stupid, crazy. Everyone's so damn worried, telling me how I shouldn't react to my wife sleeping with another man. Tell me, Gwen, how should I behave? I'd like to know, because I never thought I'd be in this situation. Ever. Gwen lowered her head, walked over to one of the kitchen chairs, and sat down. Can I have a cup of coffee when it's ready? She asked. Of course, I replied, adding the last spoonful of coffee and turning on the coffee maker. I walked over and sat down on the chair opposite Gwen. Now that most of the anxiety had passed, depression began to take hold of me. I don't understand. 3 days, I was only supposed to be away for 3 days. She couldn't keep her legs closed that long. Why? Why did she throw our marriage down the toilet like that? Was I such a bad husband? Shane, if you were a bad husband, she wouldn't be so shocked. The reason she called Joe in such a panic wasn't for his benefit. She was worried about you, what you'd do, what kind of trouble you might get into. Get in. She said she's never seen you so angry. Yes? Well, it's definitely not for me that she dressed up like that, and she definitely wasn't thinking about me when she had sex with Joe Wexler. Gwen didn't know what to say to that, and what could she say? I sat and just stared at the floor for a few minutes, waiting for the coffee to be ready. Then it occurred to me that I might be sitting with an accomplice. Gwen, did you know about this? Did you know she was cheating? No, Shane. Honestly, I didn't know anything about it until today. I was still suspicious. Damn, my wife lied to me. What makes me think her best friend will tell me the truth? Gwen saw the skepticism on my face. You don't believe me, do you? I don't know what to believe, Gwen. Maybe you should leave. Take what you came to pick up and go. I don't want to see anyone right now. I know she was a little shocked. Under normal circumstances, I'm a pretty friendly guy. Shane, don't let this change who you are. I will never. It's already changed me, I snapped. I haven't hit anyone since 5th grade, and today I enjoyed it. Did you hit him? Did you hit Joe? Damn right, I hit him. If we were alone, I would have beaten him to a pulp and enjoyed every moment of it. Are you going to be arrested? I noticed a note of real concern in her voice. I don't think so, at least not right now. The cops came, but Wexler refused to file a complaint. Who knows, maybe he'll change his mind later, I don't know. I'm sorry for Doris and their son. She looked me in the eyes. And of course you too. I don't know what Stacy was thinking. Yeah, well, if you ever find out, tell me too. I still can't believe this is happening. My whole world turned upside down today, Gwen, my whole fucking world. I didn't want to say any more. I'm sorry, Gwen. If you truly didn't know about Stacy's affair, then I'm sorry, but if I ever find out that you knew about it, I swear I will never speak to you again in my life. Now please just leave. Sorry, I just want to be alone. Gwen looked sad as she stood up from her chair. Okay, let me go upstairs and get something for her, then I'll leave. With a gurgle and a spit, the coffee maker finished its job, miraculously turning simple tap water into a magical elixir, just as Gwen returned carrying Stacy's small suitcase. Shane, what do you want me to tell Stacy? Can she come home? No, I don't want to see her. I don't want to talk to her. I don't want anything to do with her now. Keep her with you, or... I couldn't think of anything. I don't know, she has a credit card. Let her go to a motel for a couple of days if you don't want her. Tell her she can come home Friday night. You won't be here then, will you? Gwen asked. No, I'll probably move into the back room of the studio temporarily, at least until I find an apartment. I walked the gloomy Gwen to the door. Look, Gwen, I'm sorry I snapped like that. I really like Stacy with all my heart. I never thought she would do something like that. It's something I'll never be able to forget or forgive. Our marriage ended so quickly. Tell her that. Tell her I'll see the lawyer on Monday, okay? I saw the sadness on Gwen's face. She was a good friend. I'll tell her, Shane. I'm sorry, she said as she walked out. This is wrong. You love each other. It's just wrong, were her last words as she headed to her car. I felt sad that I almost kicked her out of the house. I liked Gwen and her husband Jerry. I didn't know them as well as Stacy did, but we went out together a few times. I really doubted that she knew about Stacy's affair. I couldn't be sure anyway, and in the mood I was in, I didn't want to be around anyone. I returned to the kitchen and poured myself some coffee. I sat down at the kitchen table and, looking blankly out the window, just thought. I can't even say what I was thinking. Nothing made sense. Why? What the hell could she be thinking? My mind was somewhere far away. My hungry stomach finally brought me out of my stupor. The only coherent thought I had in the last few hours was the realization that I was hungry. With all the problems associated with finding models earlier in the day, I didn't have lunch. Damn, I haven't eaten anything since meeting the team in Daily at 6 in the morning. Did this really happen this morning? Did my life really fall apart in less than a day? I didn't want to cook. Of course, I didn't want to go anywhere. In fact, although I was hungry, I didn't feel like eating. I was just so damn lost. Well, I had to eat. I looked at the clock and couldn't believe it was almost 10. I must have been sitting at my desk for a couple of hours without realizing it. There was a small diner nearby that stayed open until midnight. The food there was greasy and expensive, but I didn't care. I just needed something in my stomach. When I entered, the place was almost empty. A young couple sat in a booth by the window, and an older man sat at the center of the counter. I sat at the end of it. An older, plump woman approached with a menu and a coffee pot. Silently, I turned my coffee cup and looked at what I wanted to eat. It didn't take long. By the time she poured the coffee, I had placed my order. While waiting for my food, my mind began to search for the future. Now that I had let go of most of the anger, pain and resentment began to fill the void. I'd be fooling myself if I thought I could stay with her. I'm sure she knows it too. I've never been good at forgiving and forgetting. Anyone who knows me well knows this about me. Suddenly, I heard a plate hit in front of me. "Should I warm you up, honey?" my waitress asked as she poured the coffee. She interrupted my thoughts, and I saw a plate of steak and eggs in front of me. Oh, yes, please, but having done her job flawlessly, she was already gone by the time I spoke. Mentally closing the door on my marital problems, I tried to enjoy my late-night breakfast. It was almost 11:30 when I left. After I got up at 4 in the morning, I drove to Poria and back and went through all the physical and mental stress. I should have been absolutely exhausted, but I probably still had a little adrenaline left because I still felt excited. I didn't really want to return to an empty house. After starting the car, I tried to choose a direction. When I couldn't, I just took off and drove off. I had no idea about my route. All I knew was that I found myself in front of my studio at 2 in the morning. I still had my gear in the car, so I carried everything inside before collapsing on the couch in the locker room. By then, I was so exhausted that I didn't even remember my head hitting the pillow. When I started to wake up, I heard a ringing in my ears. I lay there for a minute as the peaceful, liberating sleep gradually gave way to awareness. I sat down and dangled my legs over the edge of the mattress. Shaking the cobwebs out of my brain, I finally realized that the annoying call was my phone. "Hello," I muttered. I wasn't entirely conscious, and I must not have sounded like myself. That's probably why there was a pause before I heard the voice. "Hello? Is this Shane?" "Yes, that's him. How can I help you?" I answered, looking at the clock on the wall. 10:30, can't be. "Shane, this is Jerry Carlson. Did you know that Stacy spent the night with us?" Finally, I came to my senses. Everything that happened the day before came back into focus. "Yeah, I told Gwen to stay at the motel if you don't want her." No, that's not it. I just didn't want to get involved in your business. I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it." "I appreciate it, Jerry. Yes, it suits me." "Okay, are you okay? You sound a little out of it." "Yeah, I'm fine. Yesterday was a long day, and between all the problems and the hit on Wexler." "To Wexler?" Jerry sounded like he didn't know anything. "Joe Wexler, did you hit him?" "Yeah, he cheated with Stacy." "What? Why do you think you have it?" I asked. "Gwen said you and Stacy had problems. but she didn't say what they were. Oh, I'll have to think about it. I know they're best friends, but I don't feel comfortable. Jerry, I said, interrupting him, it's only until tomorrow night. I need a little time to get my things together, that's all. I told Gwen to send her home Friday night. There were a few seconds of silence. I don't know. I think it'll be okay, but now I'm mad at Gwen for not telling me. I heard a big sigh from the other end of the line. I'll let her stay as long as you're sure it's right for you. Yes, Jerry, that suits me. Okay, I'll let her stay until tomorrow evening, but not a minute longer. You know, I never liked Wexler. He always seemed too cunning, narcissistic. You know what I mean? Yeah, well, I wouldn't leave him alone with Gwen, that's for sure. Oh, I can guarantee that. Okay, Shane, I'll let you go. I'm sure you have a lot to do. Thanks for letting me know what's going on. If you need anything. Thanks, Jerry. I really appreciate it. Maybe I'll ask you to hold Wexler while I pour molten lead down his throat in a little while. Ha ha, he laughed. At least you haven't lost your sense of humor. You're joking, right? I chuckled quietly. Yeah, I think so. Don't be too hard on Gwen. They've known each other since 4th or 5th grade, something like that. Yeah, I know. It still annoys me, Shane. And with that, he hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes, thinking about what I needed to do. I didn't care about furniture or such things at the moment, but there were things that I needed. I needed to take almost everything from my home office. I had the books I wanted, my computers and printer, and some light photography equipment that I kept for family events, that sort of thing. Huh, I chuckled to myself. I don't think I'll be filming things like this anymore for a while. I still didn't want to eat, but I needed something. Once I started loading everything, I didn't want to stop until I was done. I went to Denny's, 3 blocks from the studio. I drank 3 cups of coffee, chatted a little with the waitress, and ate a big hamburger. I was just finishing up when my phone rang. It was my assistant, Marcy. I picked up the phone and said hello. Are you okay? I was expecting you to call and ask me for the bail. Have you been arrested? No, the person I hit isn't filing a complaint. I'm fine. God, Shane, are you sure they're cheating? It's just, well, Stacy just doesn't seem like it. Oh, I'm sure, no doubt about it. I'm moving into the back room of the studio temporarily, so if you see a light there at night, don't be alarmed. Okay, I'm sorry, Shane, if there's anything I can do to help. Thanks, Marcy. Nothing needed yet. We said our goodbyes, I paid for lunch and headed back to the studio to pick up the SUV. It took me 3 trips back and forth between home and studio, but I finally moved everything I wanted. It was a little after 8 when I finished. I was hungry again, so I went to the nearest store and bought some frozen dinners that I could heat up in the microwave. When 9:30 came, I felt bored, lonely, and sad. Very, very sad. I lay down and wondered why I am so unapologetic when it comes to forgiveness. This is not by choice, and some people who know me consider it a character flaw. Stacy saw this firsthand at my 10th high school reunion. As a child, I took on odd jobs or part-time jobs. Over the course of several years, I saved every cent I earned until I had enough money to buy my first car as a junior. It was an old wreck, but it ran. Janet Walters was the first girl to ride her. After that, we started meeting regularly. After 3 months, I thought my life was good. I studied well, had many good friends, my own car, and one of the most beautiful girls in school as a friend. What else could life offer? Then one Saturday evening, I came to pick her up for our usual date. Her mother answered the door and seemed a little embarrassed. She told me that Janet had gone out with her friends a little earlier. I asked if she would come back for our date, and she said she didn't think so. I thought, what the hell? If it's something special, fine, but at the very least she could call and let you know. I was sure she would call me on Sunday to apologize, but I didn't hear a word. By Monday, I was seething. She and I had time to work independently before lunch. We had the opportunity to go to the library, but I preferred to do homework at school, while Janet liked to go to the library to look at fashion magazines. I haven't seen her since Friday and couldn't wait any longer to talk to her and hear her excuses. When I entered the library, she and her friend Debbie were standing at the magazine rack, their backs to the door. They were so busy talking and giggling that they didn't see or hear me when I approached them from behind. As it turns out, I didn't have to ask her. They were discussing Saturday night. "So you made it, huh? Went on a date with Brad Turner?" "You're in luck, girl," Debbie said with a small chuckle. I knew Brad Turner. He was a couple of years older than us and had already finished school. I always thought he was a narcissistic asshole. Yeah, I was supposed to go with Shane, but I ran into Brad at the mall the day before. He works at Carbudiuk. They sell seemingly cool hubcaps and stuff. He bought me lunch and asked me out on a date. I mean, would you say no? "Of course not," Debbie replied. "Does Shane know you went with someone else?" "Are you kidding?" "No, of course not." "What did you tell him? What excuse did you give him?" I couldn't think of anything. I thought of saying that I went with friends, but he knows all my friends. Brad was supposed to pick me up half an hour before Shane, so I just left. I decided to leave my mom to deal with Shane. Both girls thought it was funny. Was he angry? I don't know. I haven't seen him since. Mom said he was just surprised and left. I think I'll find out at dinner. What are you going to tell him? "Oh, I have everything thought of," she boasted. "I spent all day on Sunday coming up with plausible lies, but I decided everything." "Are you going to continue dating Brad?" Maybe a couple more times, but he's not the most exciting person. I have more fun with Shane. He makes me laugh and entertains me. Brad likes to talk about himself too much. "No, I think you should date him from now on," I said, interrupting their conversation. I heard Janet say, "Oh shit," as I walked away. I didn't say another word to her. 10 years later, she saw Stacy and I at our reunion and tried to talk to me. I just took my wife's hand and left without saying a word. Stacy couldn't believe my rudeness, but I just couldn't help it. I don't see how the passage of time has anything to do with forgiveness. Of course, the pain may subside over time, but that doesn't mean you'll forget, so why forgive? I believe in treating people the way you want to be treated. I also believe in loyalty, maybe to an extreme. Even though I've moved twice, further afield each time, I still go to the same hairdresser I did when I was 19. I have clients that I outgrew years ago, but I won't give up on them. I wouldn't be where I am today without them, and I'm not going to thank them by cutting them off, even if it makes good business sense. I know people think I'm too tough when it comes to things like this, but I guess it's like an unspoken moral code for me. This is who I am, and I won't be true to myself if I try to change it to please others. You'd think that knowing what I was like would stop Stacy from cheating on me, but obviously that's not the case. I felt a few tears escape the corner of my eye and roll down my face. I've never been so hurt ever. And knowing that this is someone who claimed to love me, that's what makes the pain so deep, so intense, so damn real. I lay there looking at the ceiling tiles and wondered why. I think all men in my situation ask themselves this question, but it seemed so out of the blue, no warning, no nothing. One moment I was a happily married man, and the next moment my marriage was over. Of course, the first thought is about sex. Was she really that unsatisfied? Of course, if you read articles about cheating, they will say that women cheat for emotional reasons. I don't know, and I don't think it really matters. I had not cried since I was 3 years old, but that night I felt the taste of my own tears several times as I lay there and tormented myself with such questions, asking questions that didn't have answers. Eventually, I fell asleep. Waking up to the sounds of city traffic instead of birdsong is a great way to start your day untrue. I took a deep breath and stood up with a long, depressing sight to face the day. I should be in my cozy bed with my Stacy all wrapped up in my arms. I could just see her looking at me with a big smile. Damn, how I missed her already. I warmed up a cup of coffee, then took a shower. I felt a little better after that, not much, but a little. I went to Denny's and wondered what to do after breakfast. I needed some kind of distracting activity. I couldn't just sit in the studio all day, I'd go crazy. I was taking my last sip of coffee when the girl from the motel popped into my head. Don't ask me why. I haven't thought about her since she called the taxi, but there she was. In my imagination, she had full black hair, high cheekbones, flawless skin, and the largest, dark brown eyes I had seen in a long time. I remembered her natural smile and friendly personality. I wonder if she ever thought about modeling. I didn't know if she had what it took until I put her on camera, but I had a hunch. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and decided to go to the motel to see if it was open. I think I had a little more pep in my step when I got back into the studio. I took my car keys and laptop. I was pleasantly surprised when I walked into the lobby and saw her behind the counter. Now all I had to do was figure out how to approach her. I've helped new models get started, but I've never tried to convince anyone to become a model. I waited until the guy working with her disappeared for a few minutes and then walked over to her. Hello. Hello, sir. May I help you? That natural smile again. You probably don't remember me. Of course I remember from that day. Would you like me to call you a taxi again? No, no. This time I have a car, I chuckled. But you helped me a lot that day, and I hope I can repay you. Here's my business card. My name is Shane Burke. I'm a commercial photographer. In my job, I work with models almost every day, and I was wondering if you'd ever thought, have you ever talked about a modeling career? Yeah, I need to take a few test shots, but I think the camera will love you. Test shots. I saw the skepticism on her face. I could anticipate the next question before she asked it. Will I need to undress? One of the downsides of my profession was the presence of creeps who used cameras to try to seduce girls. Most of them were guys who didn't know which end of the camera to look through, but there were even a few so-called professionals among them. I think every industry has its bad elements. No, you won't have to take off your clothes, I told her. Look, I have a laptop. I can show you what I do. Do you have a coffee break? If not, we can meet for lunch at my expense. I could almost see the wheels turning in her brain as she tried to figure out whether I was real or not. Finally, I saw her smile slightly. Okay, I have lunch at 11:30. There's a restaurant right across the street. Okay, this left me in a quandary. She talked about the plateau. Oh, I hesitated a little. I'm not really welcome there. It's a long story, I said with a grin. I tried to make it not seem like a big deal. Is there another place? Well, there's a Starlight Cafe around the corner. Will this suit you? I asked. Yes, I eat there sometimes. Okay, at the Starlight Cafe at 11:30. See you there, I said with a smile. When I left, I was already thinking about the upcoming shoot, for which she would be ideal. I had an hour before lunch, so I took out my phone and started making a few calls. My first was Monk. Although she was relatively new to the business, she was one of the best makeup artists I have worked with in a long time. After the greetings, I told her why I was calling. Monk, would you like to work as a TFP? Perhaps, she replied. What do you have? A new star, or at least that's what I think. She's never modeled before, but I think she's a natural beauty. How's her skin? She's slightly dark-skinned. I think she's Greek, black hair and dark eyes. You know that jewelry shoot that's coming up next month where they want that sensual look. She's perfect. When do you want to do it? I don't know yet. I'm not even sure she wants to try modeling. I'm going to talk to her in an hour. Well, I'm interested. Let me know if it works out. Absolutely, Monkey, and thank you. My next call was to Donna. She's a stylist. I work with her often. I'm probably her best client. I was almost sure that it would be available, and I was right. Marcy would complete my team. Now all I needed was to get my potential model interested. I was tired of waiting in the parking lot, so I went in and ordered a coffee while I waited. When she came in, she had someone with her. As they approached, I saw that he had a badge indicating that he was an employee of the motel. I started to think that I was wasting my time. Hi, Mr. Burke. I hope you don't mind. I brought a friend, she said as she sat down. Oh, don't worry. Tony will pay for his own lunch. I had already told the waitress that I was waiting for someone else, so she quickly came over when she saw them. I was a little annoyed and was going to let her friend pay for himself, but by the time we ordered, I decided she was just being cautious. I guess I can't blame her for that, so I told the waitress to include everything in one bill. As soon as our waitress left, Tony spoke before I could even open my mouth. How can we be sure that you are who you say you are? He asked rather aggressively. Anyone can print business cards. Do you have any recommendations who we can ask? I understood bringing someone with me, but trying to put me in a defensive position when I was just trying to offer her an opportunity was going overboard. Besides, I really didn't want to do it. Okay, this obviously won't work. I stood up and threw $30 on the table before picking up my laptop. Lunch at my expense, I said, then left. Returning to the studio, I found my phone ringing. I looked and saw that it was Marcy. Hey boss, how are you? Ha, I grinned. It's been better. Are you in the office? Yes, I went out for a while, but I'm back. I'll probably go to daily at noon. Do you want me to come? No, there's nothing to do. Well, I can come and keep you company. Maybe we can plan a future shoot or something. Thanks, Marcy. I really appreciate the offer, but I'm fine. Enjoy the long weekend. See you Monday morning. You are sure? Yes, I'm sure. Don't think about this place until I see you. She thanked me again, and we said goodbye. I went to Daily for lunch, which I haven't had before. When I got back, it was about 2:30. I was so lost. I didn't know what to do. He lay down in the back room and cursed that stupid assistant again. If it weren't for him, none of this would have happened. I would do what I love and would be completely unaware of my wife's infidelity. I thought about just trying to take a nap to kill time, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was too busy replaying everything that had happened. Finally, I got up and sat down at the computer. Maybe I could experiment with some different processing techniques to distract myself for a while. It was almost 5 when I gave up. I was thinking about going to the cinema when I heard a knock on the door. I walked into the reception area and looked out the window. It was Electa, and she was alone. I opened the door and let her in. Hi, she said somewhat shyly. I'm glad I made it before you left. I wanted to apologize to Tony. He was just trying to protect me. Did you come here to apologize? Yes, I felt bad when you left. I thought about calling, but I wanted to apologize in person. I was impressed. I don't know where she lived, but it was 45 minutes from here, probably longer during rush hour. I appreciate it, I said. Well, since you're here, let me show you the studio. I gave her a short tour for 25 cents, then returned to the office and offered her coffee while she looked at my website and portfolio. She was impressed and began to be interested, but was still a little doubtful. Do I need to sign any contracts or something? No, no contracts. The only thing I'll ask you to sign is a modeling agreement. This will give me and the client permission to use your likeness. If you start modeling full-time, you'll be signing a lot of these. She considered my words for several seconds. Do you want to take some pictures? She asked enthusiastically. Not today, I replied. I saw the disappointment on her face. You need a hairdresser, a makeup artist, and something other than this green uniform. So quickly her enthusiasm evaporated. How much will all this cost me? Just as quickly, her enthusiasm returned when I answered. Nothing. It won't cost you anything. I'm offering you an opportunity to make money, not spend it. I already have a makeup artist and a hairdresser. You'll need to sign a modeling agreement like I said. That's your payment to them. They'll be able to use the photos for your own advertising. Is this suitable for you? Yes, sure. Okay, then let's plan something. I asked her to write down my work schedule, then I called Monks and Donna while she was here. We all agreed that a Sunday afternoon would be convenient, and we blocked off a 4-hour time slot for the shoot. I instructed Electra to bring a variety of clothes, including evening wear if she had any, and not to wear makeup when she arrived. My makeup artist will take care of it. We sat and talked a little longer, after which she thanked me several times. It was after 8 when she left. This little distraction was exactly what I needed. For the first time in 2 days, I had gone a full 3 hours without once thinking about Stacy, and now I had something else to do. I needed to plan a shoot with Elkta. I sat down and started jotting down some ideas, and before I knew it, it was midnight. I hated the thought of going to bed because I knew it would lead to more misery as I lay there thinking again. God, how I missed her. I wonder what she's doing. Is she sleeping? Has she returned to the house? Does she regret what she did? I was sure yes. I imagined her crying, and my heart went out to her. I couldn't help it. It was torture, absolute torture, because I knew that no matter how much I loved her, we were finished. There was no way I could spend the rest of my life without being sure of my wife's fidelity. None. Somehow I fell into unconsciousness because the next thing I remembered was the sounds of morning city traffic. Breakfast at Delhi became a habit. About halfway through my grand slam, my phone rang. It was Jerry Carlson again. I wasn't going to talk in a restaurant, and I hate cold pancakes, so I left the call unanswered. A few seconds later, he sent a message. I checked it when I got back to the studio. Jerry, Shane, could we meet for coffee somewhere today? In all the years I'd known Jerry, we'd never had coffee or beer together without girls, so obviously he wanted to talk about Stacy. I still had some residual anger, and I wasn't sure I was ready to talk about it without an outburst. But he had something on his mind, so I decided it was worth finding out what it was. We met at a Starbucks about halfway between his house and his studio. "How are you?" was his greeting as he sat down across from me at the small table. I just looked at him. Sorry, this is probably a stupid question. Well, under the circumstances, I left it like that. Has she returned home? No, we still have her. She's completely depressed, and Gwen thinks she shouldn't be alone right now. The only time she stops crying is when she's beating herself up for hurting you. I nodded my head in acknowledgement of his words and was not particularly surprised. I figured she would be going through a lot of the same things I was going through. I couldn't help it, it was her business. Did she say anything about why? I thought. I stopped and wondered if I wanted to know why, but Jerry answered before I could take it back. That's all she and Gwen talk about, why. I don't think she has a definitive answer. There were a lot of factors. Even the stupid novel she read in high school played a role. Oh, come on, I expressed my disbelief. No, it's true. It was a novel about a woman who had an affair, and the book presented it as the most romantic thing that could happen to a woman, and there was a lot of jealousy. Jealousy? Why should she be jealous of models? No, it's not related to them. Although, he thought for a second, maybe indirectly related, but she was jealous of your profession. For her, your work was exciting and romantic. She talked about the time when you were filming a big rock band for their CD cover. She was there, I remembered. She was with me at the time. She wanted to meet them, so I took her to the shoot. They rented an old-fashioned magazine mansion on Park Avenue, and we filmed there. Hell, she spent more time with them than I did, because I was busy getting ready and setting everything up. I remember her flirting with a drummer. I thought it was funny. She was like a starstruck teenager. Remember, damn, she talked about it for a month. I know she still talks about it like it's the most exciting thing in her life. That's all she talked about when we had dinner at the Alpine one night, remember? Alpine was a restaurant near our house. I thought about it. Yes, I remember. Remember who else had dinner with us that night? This was a couple of years ago, so I had to think about it. Then I remembered. Joe and Doris, I remembered. Aha, he confirmed. You and I didn't think about it, but Joe noticed it. Did you know he started stopping by your house after that, always saying he was just nearby? No, Stacy didn't say anything. That's because he asked her not to tell. He told her that Doris was very jealous, and would go berserk if she found out that he was just stopping by for coffee every now and then. He noticed that Stacy was jealous of you and used that to his advantage. Interests. He continued to talk to her about how to diversify her life. Then he began to recommend having an affair. Sounds like he's done this before, I suggested. Yes, he even admitted it to her. He made her promise not to tell anyone, then said that he had once had an extramarital affair and presented it as the most exciting event in his life. Of course, he advised her to do the same. That's when she remembered the book. Jerry took a sip of coffee and continued. At first, she told him that she would be scared to do something like that. She knew that if you ever found out, you would kick her out. But Wexler convinced her that you would never find out. It would be her own dirty little secret. Of course, she needed to do it with someone she could trust. Guess who he suggested? I think she always found him attractive, so she didn't find the proposal disgusting. As I listened to Jerry explain what had happened, I wished I had kicked Wexler harder when I had the chance. It took him a while, but obviously he was a patient bastard. Stacy said he convinced her it would be exciting and romantic, but she was too scared to go through with it for a long time. Then you have to work out of town for a couple of days. When she told Wexler about it, he immediately started making plans. She said that it was all so secret, as long as she knew that you would never know. It was fun. A romantic, enlivening fantasy world. She was Mata Hari, Betty Page, and Cleopatra rolled into one. Of course, she was just delving into her little fantasy while you were away. I thought about how Wexler had manipulated her. Damn, I wish I could meet that bastard Wexler in some secluded alley again. You'll have to find him first, Jerry answered. Nobody saw it. Personally, I think Doris buried it in the basement, he chuckled. I wish she had told me. I would have bought her a new shovel, I joked. I can't believe Stacy fell for his bullshit. If she wanted a thrill, she could have gone skydiving instead of ruining her marriage. Jerry sighed. There is no way back, he asked. I wish there was, I replied with a sigh. It wasn't just one time. If it was the first time and she didn't go through with it, maybe, but they've been together before. It's obvious from the text messages I've seen. Twice, Jerry confirmed. What? Twice. They've been together twice before, not counting the last time because you interrupted them before they could do anything. Yes, and if I hadn't interrupted, it would have been 3 times, and probably a 4th and 5th time. No, I'm not going to work every day worrying about whether my wife is living out her fantasy of sleeping with another man. That it won't, Jerry. Yes, I certainly understand that. Stacy understands too. She has no hope for you two to reunite. I just thought, well, if there was even a remote possibility, maybe I could. I appreciate it, Jerry, but Stacy should have known the risks before sleeping with that bastard. So, he said, trying to lighten the mood a little, is your job really that exciting? I chuckled. I don't know if it's exciting, but it's interesting. Every day is a challenge to come up with new, innovative ideas to make your work stand out from others. It's fun. I know an old-timer who's been doing this all his life. He says we have to think outside the box to come up with new ways to shoot boxes. We sat and talked for 2 more cups of coffee before we went our separate ways. I liked him. This was the first time I talked to him without girls. He was funny and a pretty good conversationalist. One thing I realized after our conversation, there is no turning back for me and Stacy. Over the past couple of days, I have been struggling with myself, trying to find a way to put my anger aside, to forgive and forget, but after our conversation, I accepted the inevitable. It no longer had anything to do with my anger. It didn't even have anything to do with forgiveness, but you can't force yourself to forget something like that, and you can't force yourself to trust someone you don't trust anymore. It's over, and none of us can change it. Sleeping that night was a little easier, although I lay there thinking for a while. It will take a long time for the feelings of loss and sadness to subside. I got up early on Sunday morning. Even though I had unpacked my car, my gear was still packed into travel cases. I needed to set everything up for shooting with Elkta. This took a whole hour, after which I took a shower and went to breakfast. When I returned, Marcy was already in the office making coffee. I told her my ideas for using Electa for an upcoming jewelry shoot, but warned her not to say anything yet. I didn't want to disappoint Electa right away if the client didn't approve. Next month, we had a big shoot. We'd go to the Chicago Loop at 1 a.m. and shoot until dawn. This was a major advertising campaign for a local jewelry chain. We already had all the permits, and since the girls had to wear thousands of dollars in jewelry, the client ordered security for us. There were 2 models planned, and I was hoping that one of them would be the Electa. She was perfect for what I was looking for. Monkey and Donna arrived within minutes of each other, so I explained what I expected from each of them. When Electa walked in, my team members all exchanged smiles. She was beautiful even without makeup. The girls immediately surrounded her, helped her choose clothes, and led her to the locker room in the back. After she was settled, Marcy left Electa to the professionalism of Monkey and Donna and returned to help prepare the studio. "This girl is great," she said. "I can't wait to see her in front of the camera." "Me too," I agreed. By the end of the day, Electa had proven to everyone that she truly was the natural talent I thought she was. I gave her tips on how to play for the camera and consider the lighting. She moved gracefully and took directions like a pro. We filmed for 4 hours with breaks to update makeup and change hairstyles. By the time we were done, we had several hundred photos showing 3 completely different looks and several outfit changes. Everyone was excited to watch them, so Marcy made another batch of coffee while I downloaded everything into the computer. Over the next hour, we all oohed and awed at the stunning images. I had a full day on Monday, so I promised to edit and process some pictures that night. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when I sent emails to the team. I had 10 shots highlighting different hairstyles for Donna, another 10 highlighting makeup for Monkey, and 25 shots for Electa. I was so tired that I barely thought about Stacy before I drifted off into dreamland. The next morning, as life slowly began to emerge from unconsciousness, my neurons momentarily paused in a sleep state when I thought I smelled coffee. The voice, along with a gentle shake of my shoulder, told me that this was not a dream. I opened my eyes. "Time to get up, lazybones." Marcy stood next to the bed with a big smile, handing me a cup of coffee. I started reaching out for the cup when I realized the reason for her smile. I always slept naked. I quickly looked down and saw that I was fully dilated and had a morning boner. "Marcy," I shouted, blushing and pulling the sheet over myself. "Calm down, for God's sake. I've seen this before," she said with a grin. Setting the coffee down on a nearby stool, she added, "It's almost 7:30, and left the room, closing the door behind her. 7:30. Damn, I have a lot to do, and I overslept. Having quickly taken a sip of the magic elixir, I ran to the shower. 20 minutes later, I joined Marcy, who was looking at the photographs. "Alex. Damn, Shane, this is incredible. This girl will have a real career if she doesn't mess up." "Yeah, I don't think she's the type to mess around." I opened another file. "Here are test shots for next month's jewelry campaign. I'll send them out today and see if Chaz agrees she's a good fit." Chaz Martin was the executive director of accounts for the Sterling jewelry chain, my largest client. "Shane, I don't understand how he can disagree. She's perfect." "Well, let's see. You know how fickle this industry is. I don't want to say anything to Electa until I get firm consent from him." I looked at the schedule for the day. I had 2 shoots. Both were in the studio, and neither were big productions. I looked at my watch. It was almost 8:45. I was going to wait until 9 to call my lawyer, Bright Newcomb, so I sent Chaz a file of test shots I wanted him to see. "Are you hungry? Do you want me to go to Denny's and get you something?" What would I do without Marcy? I think I ask myself this question 20 times a day. I hired her 3 years ago. She was only 19 then. She was studying graphic art at Columbia University and needed a summer job. By the end of the summer, she had fallen in love with photography and decided she could learn more from me than she had in college. I offered her a full-time job, and she has been working with me ever since. She was quite pretty, long blonde hair, blue eyes, a little plump, but it suited her. Now that I was getting a divorce, I wouldn't mind dating her, if not for one, but her boyfriend. I don't think he would approve of this. They dated for over a year, and I was sure they would get married soon. I gave her a 20 and told her to take something for both of us. After she left, I called the lawyer and explained what I needed. I was ready to give her the house with all the property if she agreed to renounce any claims to the business. I wasn't sure of the exact amount, but I knew we had between $70,000 and $80,000 in capital. He said he would prepare the documents, and they would be ready for my signature in a couple of days. By the time the phone call ended, Marcy returned with our food. We chatted and joked for a bit, and then got to work. We had just started preparing for the first shoot when the phone rang. Photograph of Burke. Who is she, Shane? You're right, it's perfect for shooting Sterling. I took it. She's available since you sent me test pictures. Her name is Electa. I didn't want to give her hope until she got the job, but I'm sure she can fit into the schedule. When can you clarify this? I need to know that pretty quickly, he replied. I think I can give you the answer tomorrow, I told him. Great, Chaz replied. The work pays $1,200. I think this will suit her. I'm sure you do, Chaz, but don't you need to clear this with Sterling? No, they trust my judgment when it comes to models. No, she's already in, he said. We talked a little more before hanging up. Apparently, Marcy overheard the conversation. She was waiting for me when I returned to the studio. Well, that should help you get some gratitude, she said with a big smile. There were some problems with this. First of all, I haven't been divorced yet. Secondly, Electa was a little young for me. She couldn't have been more than 20 or 21 years old. Third, I would never put her or any model in a position where she thought that getting a job was a quid pro quo. Marcy knew me better. We had a few hours between filming, so I called Electa's cell phone and left a message asking her to call back when she had time. A little after 4, she called back. Having finished the greeting, I immediately got down to business. You just got your first modeling job, I told her. Her scream almost deafened me. After checking to see if my eardrum was still there, I continued. The shooting will be at night. We have 2 locations in the loop. You may have to take the next day off because the shoot will be from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. I want to take some pictures at sunrise. She seemed a little hesitant until I told her how much it would cost. $1,200, she screamed again. Oh my God, that's almost what I make in a month. The agency will have a van. There, they will do your makeup and hair. It also doubles as a dressing room, so you'll have your own space, except for the other model you'll be working with. There will also be guards, so you will be safe. Guards, she asked again. Oh yeah, you'll be wearing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry all night. We always take armed guards with us when we film for them. Oh my God, she continued to scream. It's so exciting. I think she really was jumping for joy. It was nice to hear such enthusiasm. So we have 23 days to prepare you. You did great during the shoot, but this will be different. You will have to work with another model and smoothly move from one pose to another without my instructions. This can be difficult when there are 2 of you. You must work with each other. Will you be able to come to the studio to train next weekend? Absolutely, she replied. I think I was smiling when we hung up. Marcy asked if Electa was excited. I said that was putting it mildly. My ears were still ringing. Despite the impending divorce, I had a pretty good week. I was pleased with Electa. We got a new client and did great work for several clients who couldn't stop singing my praises. On Thursday afternoon, I heard the fax start working. Since I had several upcoming jobs, I thought this was someone's route. I made a mistake. The machine spat out pages one after another. These were divorce documents prepared by Bright. Once again, divorce came to the forefront of all the events around me. My mood feels like a heavy black curtain. I still had some computer work to do, but filming was done for the day, so I gave Marcy the rest of the day free. I walked into the office, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat down to read the documents. They were as I asked. This seemed very generous on the surface, but the studio's long-term potential was much greater than what it could get for the house. Still, if she sells it, she will receive a significant amount, which will give her a fresh start. She also kept the car, which was paid off, 50% of the $15,000 in savings, and almost all the furniture. All I wanted was what I already took: my office equipment. In my opinion, it was a mutually beneficial exchange. I hope she sees it the same way. It took me a while to read everything. Legal jargon is not easy. I considered delivering the documents to Stacy that evening. I looked at my watch and decided to have dinner and wait until the next evening. Deep down, I knew I was just looking for an excuse to put it off for another day. I couldn't help it. It was one of those things you don't want to do, but you know you have to. Just not that night. Besides, I wasn't even sure Jerry and Gwen still had it. I went to Denny's, then wandered around the studio, editing a little, but I wasn't in the mood for it. I finally went to bed, but couldn't sleep properly. I constantly doubted. Of all the important decisions in my life, this was one of the three most important. The first such decision was Stacy's proposal to marry me. The next thing is to open your own business. It was made a little easier by Stacy's support. She believed in me 110%. Now I was trying to decide if I could live the rest of my life without her. When I woke up Friday morning after a night of agonizing thought, I came to the same conclusion again. Stacy and I would never be able to get back what we had. Of course, we could try. Maybe see a psychologist, but I knew that wouldn't work. I am not the same person I was before I found out about her cheating. I will not be able to regain the trust of the naive husband I used to be. There will always be an element of doubt and suspicion. I don't think Stacy is the same as she was before. Even if she did everything she could to make amends, I'm sure she would always carry the guilt with her. This is not a marriage, at least not one that can be saved. No matter how hard it is to admit, it's over between us. I grabbed my coffee and put the frozen breakfast in the microwave, then started getting ready for the day. We did one studio shoot for Feminine Classics. We didn't have time to reschedule the shoot in Peoria after last week's setback, so they agreed to a studio shoot. I wanted us to be more busy so I wouldn't have to think about what I had to do. We finished filming around 2. Marcy noticed my mood. "You're very quiet today," she remarked, thinking about Stacy. "Yes," I sighed. "Tonight I'm going to serve her with divorce papers, and I don't like it at all. Listen, we don't have any more work today. Why don't we close the studio for a while and go have a late lunch? Somewhere nice, not Denny's." I like this idea. In all my years of work, I have never taken a 2-hour lunch break, unless it was related to a client or business. Marcy and I talked about a variety of topics, even a little politics, everything except my family problems. By the time we got back, I was feeling a little better, enough to call Jerry Carlson that I kept putting it off. He said Stacy was planning to return home, but they persuaded her to stay with them for another week. I said I wanted to come over after work and explained why. Asked him and Gwen to give us some privacy. He agreed. It was almost 7 when I rang their doorbell. Jerry opened it. "Did you eat? We've just finished. Stacy and Gwen are still in the kitchen cleaning up, but I'm sure we can find some leftovers if you're hungry." "Thank you very much for the offer, Jerry, but I need to end this," I replied sadly. He looked at the A4 envelope in my hand and nodded slowly in understanding. "Gwen," he called, "Shane is here to talk to Stacy. Let's leave them alone." A few seconds later, I saw Gwen approaching. When she saw me, she closed her eyes and quickly shook her head. Without a word, she followed Jerry up the stairs. As I rounded the corner, I saw Stacy through the kitchen doorway. She looked like a zombie, sitting at the table and staring into space. As long as I live, I will never forget her face when she saw me and looked at the envelope. She was petrified with fear. It seemed as if I myself had come to take her soul. I sat down opposite her. Stacy stared mindlessly at the laminated wood surface of the table. Her eyes slowly lifted as I said her name. I'm sorry, she said in a weak voice. I know, I replied, but it won't help. I know, she repeated my words. I asked Bright Newcomb to prepare the documents, I told her. I'm giving you the house, the car, and half of my savings. Why? Because I want 100% of the business. I think it will be fair, I explained. I'm really sorry, Shane, she said again, this time with tears in her eyes. I don't know what made me do what I did, but I never wanted to hurt you. For a moment, I thought about returning the pain to her. If we had talked last week, I most likely would have been ready to deliver a verbal blow straight to the heart. But more than a week has passed since then. I had time to calm down and think. It was easy to see how much she was suffering. I didn't need to make it worse. I know, Stacy. Jerry said it was a way to add a little spice to your life. I wish you would talk to me if you were unhappy. I'm sure we could find something another way to make your life more interesting. I felt like I was starting to lose control of my emotions. I placed the envelope on the table and stood up. Look at them, Stacy. If you don't think it's fair, let me know. She tried to hold back a sob, but was not entirely successful. It's all my fault, Shane. I don't deserve any of this. Well, watch them anyway. I started to walk away, but stopped and slowly turned around. I should have told her. I want you to know, I will always love you, Stacy. They say there is a thin line between love and hate. Last week I hated you, at least a little. I think I still feel hate at times, but I will always love you. With that, I hurried out, stopping only to shout up to the second floor and thank Gwen and Jerry. About a mile from their house, I had to stop to wipe the tears from my eyes. I'm not a big drinker. I can drink a couple of beers while socializing or at a business dinner, but nothing more. Never drank alone, except that night. I parked my car at the studio and walked 6 blocks to a bar I'd passed by thousands of times but never entered. I sat down in the most secluded and darkest corner and sipped 4 bottles of beer. When I found my way back to my bed, it was already after 1 in the morning. Luckily, I fell asleep immediately as soon as I touched the pillow. The last thing I remember was wondering how Stacy was coping. On Saturday, I went to look for an apartment. I'm tired of living in the back room of the studio. I was hoping to find something close to the studio, perhaps within walking distance. Found a nice 2-bedroom apartment with a stone patio on North Lazal and put down a deposit while waiting for a credit check. The biggest plus was the availability of underground parking for residents. In Chicago, this can be a lifesaver in the winter. Thank God for Sunday. My mood has been gloomy since Friday night, but there was no better cure for me than work. Electa arrived around 11, and we worked together until 3. It was just the 2 of us. I wasn't trying to get great pictures. It was a training session. I showed her how to move smoothly from one pose to another and then wait for a flash before the next movement. I taught her to consider lighting, how to recognize the type of lighting a photographer is using, and how to move without creating shadows. We discussed the lighting I was going to use for her shoot, and I showed her how to move so as not to create shadows on the other model. I explained to her the terms photographers use to describe their requirements, and gave her some advice on which assignments to take on and which ones to avoid. By the end of the day, I was more confident than ever that Electa would make it in the modeling industry. If she worked at it and didn't mess up like so many potential models do, I had no doubt that New York and Paris would be waiting for her. I needed 2 more sessions with her before our shoot, so we scheduled the next one in 2 weeks. I was sad to see her go because I hadn't thought about Stacy and divorce since she arrived. Monday was as boring as any other day until the phone rang in the afternoon. Twice. The first time, the lady from the apartment management company called. My loan was approved and I could move in the next day. The second call was from Jerry, who wanted to meet after work. We met at the same Starbucks as before. He had my envelope in his hand. She asked me to check them instead of a lawyer. I told her everything was fine as far as I understood, so she signed them. He told me, "There's nothing in the documents that I didn't notice, right? No tricks?" "Jerry, you know me better," I said, a little offended. "I know, I'm sorry. I'm just not used to reading all this legal nonsense, he said, handing me the envelope. I couldn't help but ask, how is she? Ah, she'll be fine. I think the waiting was the hardest thing for her. Now that you've handed her the papers, I think she's finally accepted her fate, although she would happily jump into your arms if you said you forgive everything. Yeah, well, that won't happen. Serving these documents was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it had to be done. You know, before all this, I never realized that you could hate and love someone at the same time. I know. Let me tell you, this whole thing got me thinking about Gwen and me. Honestly, I don't know what I would do if I were you. I'd like to think I'm man enough to do what you did, but I just don't know. Jerry took a sip of black coffee and continued, I'll tell you one thing, it certainly took all thoughts of cheating away from me. It's not that I thought about it at all. It's just, seeing how it affected you too really makes you think. Gwen too. We talked last night before bed and kind of renewed our vows right there. It was almost painful to hear about how great Gwen and Jerry's relationship was. Secretly, I wish it was the same for Stacy and I. Have you heard anything from our company? Knew he was referring to our group of friends. We really had a lot in common. Not a word, I replied. I am surprised. You have many sympathizers. Of course, some women think you're too cruel and should give Stacy another chance, but the men are all on your side. God, does the whole city really know about our problems? Maybe Doris tells everyone about her worthless husband and mistress who destroyed her happy family. Oh, basically, I shouldn't be surprised. So she filed for divorce? Oh yeah, has already given and is thirsty for blood. Joe will be lucky if he has a pair of underpants left after she's done with him, he chuckled. Well, I have to go home, he said, taking his last sip of coffee. I think Stacy will come home on Wednesday or Thursday. Don't worry, he said, noticing the look of concern on my face. We'll still keep an eye on her. I thanked him and asked him to convey my gratitude to Gwen. Okay, it's all over now. I will give the signed documents to Bright, he will issue, and in 6 months we will be divorced. Again, I had mixed feelings. It was the end of my marriage, the end of my relationship with Stacy. I thought we would be together until we were old, and the thought of a future without her was depressing. At the same time, I felt relieved. It's over and I can move on. Tuesday morning marked the beginning of a new era, even though it started out like a normal day. Woke up from the alarm clock. I had a few shoots this week, nothing grand, but enough to keep you busy. Despite having an apartment, I still slept in the back room of the studio. I had no furniture, no bed, no table, no chairs, nothing. Every day I planned to go shopping after work, but I was always too tired. To be honest, I wasn't that busy. I knew that part of my fatigue was due to mild depression. I decided that I would move into my own apartment by Sunday, even if I had to sleep and eat on the floor. On Saturday, I was determined. I bought a bed, a table and chairs, and one armchair. I took my computer desk and other office furniture out of storage and installed it all in the second bedroom. We managed to deliver and install everything by Sunday evening. I also filled the refrigerator and prepared myself some dinner, after which I made coffee and sat down in my new chair. I looked around. It was so quiet, so lonely. This was my life for the next few weeks. Work. Home to an empty apartment. We managed to buy a few more things, a TV, a stereo system, and the necessary things. The highlight of this time was working with Alta. Sometimes at night I fantasized about her. These were just fantasies. She was very focused on her modeling career, and as hypocritical as it may sound, I couldn't marry a model. Models travel a lot and are constantly harassed, often by very rich men who want to be seen with them. No, especially considering how my first marriage ended, I couldn't marry a model. The night of the shoot arrived for Sterling. Sterling Jr. Phil, who was vice president of marketing, was there with Chazem. Marcy brought Aaron, her boyfriend, to help with the equipment. With 3 security guards, 2 makeup artists, and a stylist, there were 13 of us. Planning is critical on large-scale shoots like this. We filmed for another hour after sunrise, but the streets were already starting to fill up, so we had to stop filming. I was more than pleased with the result, and so was the client. Phil Sterling spent the entire evening flirting with Alta. Hated to see it. He was 20 years older than her and married. I pulled her aside while we were gathering equipment and warned her about Sterling. She said she had to endure the same thing at the hotel. She was constantly asked to show someone the number in person. She told me not to worry. She is good at politely refusing men. Over the next month, I used Electa every chance I got. She was already earning more in a week than she earned in a month at the hotel. She still didn't want to quit, but a scheduling conflict forced her to make a choice. Ultimately, the choice was between a modeling career and working in a hotel. She made the right choice. Everything fell into place. Business was going well and my apartment was fully furnished. I heard from Gwen that Stacy was back home and coping. Some of our friends visited her, and someone got her a job as a secretary. I was looking through photos when the phone rang. "Marcy," I called. "Can you answer, please?" A minute later, she returned looking a little stunned. "This is Victor Sikorsky." I probably had the same expression on my face when I turned sharply towards her. Victor Sikorsky was Chicago's leading photographer. He was internationally famous and photographed for Vogue, Mademoiselle, and Elle, among others. He was also responsible for launching the careers of some of the most famous supermodels. Did he say what he wanted? "No, he just wants to talk to you," she replied. Having no idea what would interest Victor Sikorsky in me, I jumped up and answered the phone. "Hello? Shane, this is Victor Sikorsky. How are you?" "Ah, okay, Victor, and you?" 73 and still feeling like a boy, he joked. "Listen, I won't take up much of your time, but I would like to use one girl for the shoot. She's not registered with any agency, so I asked around and everyone said I should contact you. She is a brunette with dark eyes." "Electa," I said, interrupting him. "Yes, I work with her a lot." "Electa is a great name. Do you think she will be available for a fashion shoot next week?" "I can almost guarantee it, Victor. Can I give her your number so she can contact you?" "Of course, I would be grateful. Let me give you another number in case she can't reach me in the studio." Victor gave me his mobile number and asked me to tell her to call before the next evening. He needed to decide quickly. Marcy stood by the whole time I was talking to him. "He wants to use Electa?" she asked as soon as I hung up. "Yes," I said, perhaps less enthusiastically than it should be. "You don't want her to do it?" "Of course I do. Well, I was hoping I could use it a little more, that's all." As soon as I said it, I realized how selfish it sounded. "What do you mean?" "Marcy, this is her chance. I don't know who his client is, but you can be sure that she will earn more for this one shoot than for the entire time she worked with us. I'm happy for her, Marcy interrupted. "Shane, she owes you. God, she wouldn't even be a model if it weren't for you. I can't imagine her leaving us because of one shoot at Sikorsky." "She won't have a choice, Marcy. Once her photograph appears on the international market with his name on it, it will be demanded all over the world. You can be sure. She will earn 10 times more than we can afford to pay her." I considered Electa my protege and was almost reluctant to convey Victor's message to her. It was almost like losing two women in my life. It's not that I thought anything would happen between us, but I was very attached to her. I called her right away. At first, she argued with me. She said she only wanted to work with me, but I told her that she could never make a living working with just one photographer. I almost ordered her to call Victor immediately after our conversation. She finally promised that she would do it. I didn't hear anything from her for a long time and started to think that she really didn't call or ignore it. 4 days later, she burst into the studio and almost jumped on my neck. I got it, she screamed. "I got a job with Victor. Shane, how can I thank you enough? $35,000 for one shot. Imagine $35,000. She hugged me and hugged me tightly. Marcy stood there with "and I told you so" grin on her face. I had no illusions. I knew that Electa would soon become an international star in this business, and I doubted that I would ever see her again. Just remember what I taught you and remember what I said about guys like Phil Sterling. Now they will be everywhere. Just stay focused. Yes, Daddy, she said with a grin. You will also need to register with a couple of large agencies. They'll take some of yours making money, but it's a way for other photographers to find you. I made 300 compositions for you. The first ones you should go to are Ford and Wilhelmina. They will distribute the cards to their agencies in New York, Los Angeles, and Paris. Paris, she screamed again. Do you really think I can get to Paris? I can almost guarantee it, I said with a forced smile. I know it sounds stupid, but I had a hard time holding back my tears as I handed her the composite cards I made. I'll do everything tomorrow, she promised, then kissed me on the cheek. I don't know how I can thank you enough, Shane, and you too, Marcy, she added, looking back. Marcy simply smiled and wished her luck. When Electa left the studio, or perhaps I should say, floated away on a cloud, I knew I would never see her again, at least not in person. $3,500 for one shoot, Marcy was surprised. By this time next year, she'll be working with the best photographers in the world and making 4 times as much, I said. She'll be rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous, and you and I won't even be remembered. I looked into the sad face of my faithful assistant. Come on, I said with a forced smile, let's get back to work. For the next couple of months, that's exactly what I did worked, and worked some more. I think a lot of people do the same in situations like mine. They immerse themselves in work. The positive side was the money. I was earning more than I ever had in my life. The negative side was loneliness. Marcy kept pushing me to start dating again, but I really wasn't in the mood. Honestly, finding out that your wife is cheating on you with another man can be a huge blow to your self-confidence. Of all the couples Stacy and I were in touch with when we were married, only Jerry and Gwen remained in contact. They took me out to dinner one time, and I met Jerry a couple of times for beers after work. They didn't rub my nose in, but they did occasionally mention how Stacy was doing. I think they did the same for her. It seems like she was going to try to keep the house, but after paying the bills for a couple of months straight, she gave up. Whenever she could, Gwen, ever the optimist, would casually mention that Stacy wasn't dating anyone either. I don't think I can blame her for that. One day, I realized that I was so busy with work that I forgot about time. Of course, I kept a close eye on my schedule. Monday, shooting, Wednesday, another shooting, but in terms of the calendar year, I was completely lost. Each day simply merged with the previous one. It was Marcy who brought me out of this state. Shane, I have Labor Day off, right? Aaron and I are going to his parents' house. Labor Day, I said. Yes, on Monday. Oh, yes, of course, it's your day off, I replied. Later that evening, I sat in my apartment thinking that summer was coming to an end. I usually enjoy summer, but this year I didn't enjoy it. Summer has always been a time of fun for Stacy and me, going to the beach, meeting friends, driving around to see the sights. I thought back to April and that disastrous shoot in Peoria, trying to find one truly happy moment since then, and found none, and now summer is almost over. It was depressing. The next day, everything changed. Jerry called, inviting me to a Labor Day party at his home. At first, I doubted. Thought Stacy would be there, and I really wasn't ready for that, but he said she had other plans. I didn't ask which ones. He finally persuaded me to come, and I even began to look forward to it. The day turned out to be beautiful, warm, and sunny, so everything was arranged in their garden. When I arrived, I saw a lot of people whom I had not seen for several months. Of course, everyone expressed regret about my divorce, but as soon as that was said, I began to enjoy the event. Besides the usual company, there were several people there that I didn't know. I noticed one woman in particular. She was not a dazzling beauty, but she was attractive and had a stunning figure. I watched her for a while and didn't notice that she was with anyone. But just as I was about to introduce myself, someone came up and started a conversation. When I looked in her direction again, she was no longer there. I didn't want to be perceived as stalkerish, or worse, desperate, so I grabbed a paper plate and headed to the grill. I was waiting for Jerry to put a burger on my bun when she came up behind me. "You're a photographer, right?" Jerry and I both looked in her direction. Jerry took the initiative. "You haven't met yet. Sorry. Shane, this is Sydney Ringstrom. She's working with Gwen. Sid, this is Shane Burke, and yes, he is a photographer, and a very nice guy," he added with a big smile. "Nice to meet you," she said, extending her hand. I took her hand and greeted her as well. "Are you interested in photography?" I asked as Jerry placed the burger on our buns. "I don't take photographs myself, but I like to look at photos in magazines and stuff. Gwen says you're famous." I laughed in response. "No, I'm not famous, not at all. In fact, if you walk 2 blocks from my studio in any direction, you won't find a single soul who knows my name," I said, correcting her. "But I'm proud of my work." We moved to a couple of chairs under the shade of a tree and talked while eating our holiday meal. She was from some small town in the outback that I had never heard of, and she had only lived in Chicago for 3 years. She really seemed very nice. She was also playful and cheerful, with a good sense of humor. We laughed together several times, for the first time in a long time. I couldn't help but wonder what she'd be like in bed. I still had a month left before the official divorce, but if there was a chance to sleep with her, I wouldn't miss it. We were separated several times throughout the day as other people caught our attention, but we always found a way to be close again. As the party started to wind down, I was about to ask for her number, but she beat me to it. "I'd love to see your studio someday." "Anytime," I replied, "just tell me when." "Is it true? Are you open on weekends?" "No, but that doesn't mean you can't come. Saturday, Sunday, what suits you? I live just a few blocks from the studio, so this isn't a problem for me. I spend half my time there on the weekends anyway, editing photos." The next day, Marcy noticed a smile stretching across my face. I admit I felt good. I had made reservations at a nice restaurant in town and planned to take Sid out to dinner after the studio tour on Saturday. She seemed interested in the party, so I was sure she would accept my invitation. I even caught myself quietly singing under my breath while I was setting up the equipment for filming something I used to do all the time. Marcy asked a couple of times during the day what was going on. I told her it was nothing. I just feel a little better. She looked at me suspiciously, but let it go. On Saturday, I came to the studio a little early to clean up a bit. I made some coffee and put a couple of beers in the small refrigerator when she came in. It was a little disappointing to see that she wasn't wearing those tight shorts, but she still looked good in the short skirt. We walked around the studio. I explained how everything works and what I use this and that for. She wanted to see some of my work, so we went to the office and had a beer while I showed her some of the final edits of the advertising shots I had taken recently. One of the reasons I don't drink a lot of beer is because it goes through me quickly. I left her in front of the computer screen and excused myself for a minute to go to the toilet. When I returned, she was no longer there. I only had one bathroom, so I knew it wasn't there. I couldn't imagine her leaving, so I called her. "Here," she replied. Her voice seemed to be coming from the studio, so I went there. I found her standing in front of my flashes naked. "Well, show me how to pose," she said, smiling. "It's funny, sometimes the assignment requires working with a nude model. When it's the case, it doesn't bother me. It's just part of the job. But walking into a room and seeing the beautiful naked body of the woman I want to sleep with has the same effect as it does on anyone else. I really wanted her right now. Unfortunately, the fact that she was in the studio and not waiting for me in my bed led me to believe that she wasn't quite ready for the next step yet, so." "Wait," I said. "If we do this, we'll do it right." I changed the background and moved some boudoir-style furniture, showed her how to pose, and took some artistic nude shots. She clearly didn't expect this. I think she thought that I would snap her standing naked a couple of times, and that would be the end of it. We spent about an hour filming. When we finished, I gave her a robe, and we went to the office to load the pictures into the computer. I have never seen anyone so happy when they saw their photos. I made a couple of quick edits on the best ones and printed them out for her. She happily accepted my offer to go out to dinner, after which we ended up at my house. She wasn't very impressed. She said, looking around. I see that your artistic talent as a photographer does not extend to your taste in furniture. She smiled when she said it, but she was right. I don't need much, I replied. I spend 80% of my time in the studio. All I need here is a place to eat and sleep. Sleep. Yes, she said flirtatiously. Where do you do this? I'm sure my heart beat a little faster. Right here, I said, taking her hand and leading her to the bedroom. The bedroom furniture was no better than the living room, but I had a good queen-size mattress. At the time of purchase, I foresaw such cases. We made love. I tried to get her to stay the night, but she said she had to go to work the next day and needed to go home. However, I managed to persuade her to take a shower before leaving. The first really cold day of the season and the last remnants of my marriage arrived in the mail. I wondered if this was an omen. Sydney and I met 2 or 3 times a week for intimate pleasures, but there was no real spark for either me or her. As soon as I saw the envelope from the Cook County Clerk's office, I pulled it out and set the rest of the mail on the table. It was all work-related, so Marcy walked through it. You were wrong, she said, holding the card in her hand. Wrong. About what? You said we'd never hear from you again. Busy. She sent us a postcard. From Paris. Can't be. What is she writing? She read the short note. I did it. I still don't know how I can thank you. With love, Electa. Her timing couldn't have been better. Reading the words dissolution of marriage, you can become despondent, no matter what anyone says. But the postcard from Electra seemed to balance the scales, the end of one chapter, the beginning of another. A month later, we already had snow, and the temperature was about 35 degrees. Winter was about to come quickly. I was able to renew a few friendships at Jerry's Labor Day party, so I was invited here and there. Sometimes Sydney would join me, but I still wasn't actively involved in dating. Apparently Stacy was better at it than I was. I heard through mutual friends that she was dating a nice guy she met at work. Looks like they went to a company picnic together on Labor Day. That's why she wasn't at Jerry's party. Secretly, I wished her well. After all, I once loved this woman with all my heart. I couldn't hold a grudge forever. If you've ever been to Chicago in the winter, you know about the frustrating hassles of parking. I didn't care how cold or windy it was, as long as I didn't need to use my car for work. I would leave it in the parking lot, grab a thermos of hot coffee, and walk the 13 blocks to the studio. My route always took me past a street magazine stand, one of the last remaining memories of old Chicago. Of course, I always looked at the covers as I passed by. One particularly cold day in late February, the cover of the March issue of Vogue caught my eye. The headline read, "The World's Newest Supermodels," and the photo was of Electa, looking absolutely stunning. The photo was copyrighted by Cuffalo, probably the most famous photographer of the time. I was sincerely happy for her and smiled as I passed by. I thought, who knows, maybe we will meet again someday. Of course, the likelihood of this was very low. Now she moved in different circles than me. Well, I could always say that I knew her, although no one would believe it. I had only been in the studio about 15 minutes getting ready for the day when a very excited Marcy stormed into the studio. "Shane, did you see that?" she almost screamed, waving her copy of Vogue in my face. "Yes, I'm happy for her," I said. I was a little surprised by her enthusiasm. Marcy was a little jealous of Electra for not working with us anymore. "This is all. Are you happy for her? Did you read the article?" "No, I just saw the cover on the way here." Shane, they interviewed some of the newest top models in the business. Interview with Electa the very first thing. "Shane, this whole article is about you." What? I wasn't sure I heard her correctly. "She's telling you how you found her while she was working at the motel. She says how you worked with her and taught her everything she knows. She says that she considered you as a second father because you always took care of her and protected her. And, she emphasized the word, she says that having worked with some of the most talented photographers in the world, she feels like you were just as talented. She even mentions me. Let me take a look, I said, holding out my hand for the magazine. I sat down on a stool and began to read. Of course, everything was there. I have received many accolades throughout my career and many clients have admired my work, but never have I received such rave reviews. What do you think of her now? I asked my smiling assistant. Hey, I've always loved Electa, she replied in a guilty tone. I just laughed. The first call came from Victor congratulating me. He said he was a little jealous that she didn't mention him, but he thought I deserved every word. I thanked him. Wow, I thought. His call was followed by several more from lesser-known people, but each of them lifted my spirits. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon my cell phone rang, and I heard a voice that I had not heard for several months. Hi, Shane. Stacy. Her voice sounded much better than the last time I spoke to her. Hello, how are you? I'm fine. You know, she said with a slight laugh, when I screw something up, I screw it up big time. If I weren't so stupid, I would be married to a world-famous photographer. Now it was my turn to laugh. Sorry to ruin your fantasy, but I'm still the same hard-working photographer you always knew. You won't be like this for long, she countered. I think that model you helped just opened up a new career for you. I just wanted to call and congratulate you, Shane. You truly deserve every good thing that happens to you. You are a great photographer and an even better person. I still cared about this woman. I knew this because her call meant more to me than all the others combined. Thank you, Stacy. I also want to wish you all the best. I heard you have a new man in your life. Ha ha, I could imagine her laughing as she spoke. I see the information highway works both ways when it comes to our friends, she chuckled. I'm actually dating someone. His name is Spencer. He's an inside salesman where I work. He's a really good man, Shane. You'd like him. Well, I truly wish you the best, Stacy. Thank you, Shane. With this, we said goodbye. Hearing her voice, I remembered some good moments we spent together. I could close my eyes and imagine her naked body standing in front of me. The deep emotional love I once felt was gone, however, and with it the anger and pain disappeared. She was right about one thing. This article did open up a new career for me. From that day, my life began to change dramatically. My first big break was shooting the cover of Chicago magazine. Then there was a trip to California for filming swimsuits. This was followed by an editorial photo shoot for Elle magazine. Then I went back to the studio for a national advertising campaign for Maybelline. I promoted Marcy from assistant to photography assistant and hired 3 new assistants, 2 for myself and 1 for her. I also had to invest in more equipment. I hated doing it, but I spent $42,000 on one camera, and that's not including lenses. They were worth more $18,000. Marcy was worried about filming on location and not having the right lighting, so I invested in battery-powered studio lights that we could take with us to locations, $2,000 each. I took 6, 3 for her and 3 for myself. Over the next few months, we were sent on assignments to Iceland, the Greek islands, and London. Marcy and I worked with movie stars, supermodels, celebrities, and the elite of society. It was a Thursday in the middle of summer when we returned to Chicago. Erin was waiting for us when we landed at O'Hare Airport in the afternoon. I've never seen 2 people miss each other so much. When they saw each other, they both ran so fast that I thought they would collide and kill each other. Erin helped load all of our equipment into the SUV, but then I told them to leave. He said I could handle it myself. Marcy asked if I was sure. I just nodded and told her not to worry about work and to take a 3-day weekend. All I wanted was to return to my humble abode and relax, but first I had to stop by the studio and unload the equipment. It really was nice to be home. It almost felt like the walls were hugging me when I walked in. It was almost 8 in the evening when I arrived at my apartment. Good old frozen dinners. I still had a few. I put one in the microwave and made coffee. I tried watching TV, but fell asleep in the chair. I don't remember what time I woke up and went to bed, but it was almost 10 in the morning when I finally woke up. By the time I showered, got dressed, and went to Denny's for breakfast, and then returned, it was already midday when I made the first call of the day. He was my business manager. Yes, now I was on top. I needed a manager. It was Steve Warren. All business calls went through him. He in turn would call me when he knew I had time to talk, and we would discuss what jobs I would take, and then he would schedule them. He also handled all travel plans and bookings. I couldn't handle it on my own anymore. There was no chatter when we talked. No, how was the trip, or anything like that, just business. As soon as he picked up the phone on the other end, he got straight to the point. How about working with Elkta? Is it true? I wish I could. How about shooting the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue? Are you kidding? There were several jobs in my industry where being selected for shooting was equivalent to receiving a prestigious award. The C swimsuit issue was one of them. I guess you're saying I have to choose between one or the other. No, Electa has already been accepted as one of the models. She suggested you for the shoot, and the C editor thought it was a good idea. I'm in, I shouted enthusiastically into the phone. Where are we going to film? Bora Bora, he replied. But wait, I'm not done yet. It's not certain yet, but your name is also being considered for next year's Pirely calendar. I was in a daze. The Pirely calendar was another such prestigious project. I won't get my hopes up too much, Steve. I think I was in a state of task overload. I couldn't imagine getting both jobs. He also has a studio shoot planned for Wednesday for Feminine Classics. They said they needed a rainy night scene for a new line of raincoats. Since no precipitation was expected, I had to make it rain myself. I already had a pretty good idea of how and where to do it. After our conversation, I decided to celebrate. Sid called and invited her for dinner on Saturday, and for bedtime later. Jerry also called to let me know I was back in town. He and Gwen immediately invited me to dinner on Sunday to hear about my adventures. I sent them several postcards from various distant countries. I never leave things to the last minute, so I went to the studio to unpack my equipment and start sketching for shooting on Wednesday. As usual, when I start working on something, time flies by, and the next time I pay attention to my stomach, it begins to growl. I finished the day and went home for dinner and a good night's sleep. Saturday evening was pleasant. As I said, there were no romantic sparks between Sid and me, but we became good friends with benefits. She was smart, she spoke well, and she was damn good in bed. We went to a nice restaurant for dinner, then to a jazz club that she liked. They returned to me around midnight. By then, we were both ready for action. Since she didn't have work the next day, she stayed the night. I loved it when she did that. Sunday was the day I was invited to Gwen and Jerry's for dinner. They both wanted to hear about Greece. They always dreamed of going there, but couldn't afford it. They were still saving money, so they wanted to know all the details. I called to see if they had room for one more person and brought Sid with me. During and after dinner, I kept everyone in awe with my stories. Everyone literally jumped when I told them what I was filming Nicole Reynolds in London for an advertisement. Nicole was one of the biggest movie stars, not to mention she was incredibly beautiful. Then there was supermodel Claudia Stafford. Jerry didn't know who it was, but Gwen knew. I was surprised when she left for a minute and then came back with a Victoria's Secret catalog and showed it to Jerry. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. "Damn it," was his only comment. "Let me take a look," Sid asked. Gwen showed her a photo of Claudia in a sheer bra and panties. Sid looked at me with a raised eyebrow. I just smiled. "Did you receive our cards?" I asked. "Yeah, and your ex too," Jerry blurted out before Gwen tried to stop him. "My ex? I didn't send her cards." "I accidentally dropped one when she was here for coffee one day," Gwen explained. "She was sitting at the kitchen table when I put the mail down. I didn't know there was a card there until it fell on the floor. She slid under her chair so Sheher I picked it up and saw that it was from you. It was the one from the Virgin Islands. She didn't say anything, but she saw tears when she handed it back. I couldn't help but sigh. I knew how she must have felt. Of course it had to be that card, I said. We went there for our honeymoon. Other than that trip to Nova Scotia a few years ago, this was the only time she was outside the US. She always wanted to return. Knowing that I was there without her must have really hit her hard. I feel sorry for her, Sid remarked. I think every day she regrets what she did. I know that for a fact, Gwen replied. Later in the evening, Gwen and Sid went out to talk like girls, so Jerry and I went out onto the terrace with a couple of beers. You really live a good life, don't you? He remarked. London, Greece, exotic islands. Crap, take it, man. You are right. Every day I wake up and think it's all just a dream. I don't think Stacy will ever forgive herself. She and Gwen all talk almost every day. She can't believe how badly she ruined everything. She says you should take her with you to Europe. She is right. If we were married, I would never leave her at home. The last time I spoke to her, she was dating a guy she met at work. She said that he was a very good person. Are they still dating? Yes, Spencer, he's a really good person. We've all had dinner together a few times, but, well, he's boring. He's a salesman, and he always talks as if he is selling something. Not literally, of course. He doesn't offer a box of soap or anything like that. It's just his communication style. But he loves Stacy very much. You can see it in his eyes every time he looks at her. I think they'll probably get married. Okay, I'm glad for her, I said sincerely. You know, Jerry, it's really funny how things work out. If I hadn't come home that day and found Stacy cheating on me, I would never have gotten to this point in my career. I would still be shooting for a few local ad agencies. You're a talented guy, Shane. It was only a matter of time. No, Jerry, I interrupted him. I would never have walked into that motel and met Electa. This is exactly what changed everything. I worked with her and helped her start her modeling career. In turn, she recommended me for several major filming projects, and here I am. I took a sip of beer and continued. I have to admit, Jerry, I'm enjoying life right now. I'm not the kind of person who likes to brag, but, well, you know, this is a whole other level. And yes, I work a lot. I just throw myself into it. Of course, there are times when I miss being lovers and know that someone loves me. But now I enjoy my free life. I'm not saying I'll never get married again, I'm sure I will. But for now, I'm going to enjoy life as a single bachelor. Until Cupid's arrow hits me, I will make as much money as possible, travel and sleep with everyone, movie stars, and any supermodels I can get, I added with a big smile. Here's to you and the single life, Jerry said, raising his beer bottle in a toast. To a single life, I repeated, clinking our bottles. I really had a lot of fun working with Elta again. When she first saw me on location in Bora Bora, she ran up and jumped into my arms as if I were her long-lost father. We have always worked well together, and of the 6 models C hired for filming, she was chosen for the cover. Since then, I have practically traveled all over the world on one assignment after another. Marcy and Aaron got married. He quit his job, and I took him on my salary so they could travel together. He doesn't make much, but Marcy makes good money, so it works. I'm doing exactly what Jerry told me I would do. Until now, I think I've slept with half the most beautiful stars in Hollywood and most of the supermodels on magazine covers. I made it a goal to sleep with every Victoria's Secret top model, and I only had 2 left. I'm still at home sometimes. When I'm here, I always meet my friends, especially Jerry and Gwen, and also Sid. The last time I visited them, they said that Stacy and Spencer were getting married. I still haven't met him, but apparently he knows everything about me. According to Gwen, Stacy never stops talking about me, poor Spencer. Gwen said that Stacy was debating whether to invite me to the wedding. I asked for the date, and it turned out that I would be on assignment in the Cayman Islands at that time. Well, I have to catch a flight to Los Angeles. I was invited to a party at a fashion magazine's mansion. Who knows, maybe I'll meet the girl of my dreams there, or maybe not, but I certainly won't miss the opportunity. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.